it's those members who just take who they are and kind of add it to the community. They don't integrate themselves and care for others and have that care come back to them. I think those are the communities where it's not belonging, it's more of just being with no real connection.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest who will introduce herself. Katie, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Katie Starobin, and I use she, her pronouns. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and now I am sitting up here in Seattle. I'm just finishing out my 4th year of college over at Seattle University. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you, Kay. And you know, you and I are both on the advisory council. I think that's the official name. I don't even know. Michael will not be happy with me as an ambassador, but both of us are on that council. And yeah, so it's such a delight to, being able to talk with you. So you were, before we started recording, you were telling me you were born and raised in Las Vegas?
Los Angeles.
Oh, Los Angeles. Oh, so when I said, okay, you were in the desert, so that's not true.
Well,
Okay.
it's still hot there. We call it the desert. Many days over 100 and droughts. It kind of feels like the desert.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about that, about, Los Angeles. Do you have siblings? Or,
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. My parents and grandparents had all been in the Southern California their whole life
Okay.
as well. So I grew up in a nice neighborhood, Tarzana, with a sister, my 2 parents, and then I had dogs throughout my life. My family fostered dogs for many years, and then many years we just adopted our own. Yeah, I have an older sister. She's just under 3 years older than me. And some pretty significant parts about growing up. I played soccer for many, many years. That's where all of my free time, all of our weekends were spent, especially in the summer. We were at tournaments all weekend, driving pretty far. And then a couple other notable parts where I went to sleepaway camp growing up with what was it called? The Jewish Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Los Angeles. That organization provided me so many resources growing up. I kind of got into it late. I only went to camp in high school as a sophomore and junior, but they provided me tons of resources helping out with college. And then a third major part of my upbringing that was really important to me was my high school. I was in a humanities magnet program, so I got a really comprehensive education in history, philosophy, intercultural studies. That was pretty significant. And my sister went there as well. So I was able to have someone with me for 2 of those years.
Nice.
And then, she went off to Chico State. And then a few years later, I came up to Seattle University.
But outside of the soccer, you were really active as well, right? In all kinds of activities.
Yes. Wow. Quite a few years ago at this point. But yeah, in high school, I became really busy. My high school itself was a lot of work. We had, it was very interdisciplinary, and it was known for being extremely rigorous. The word on the street was that it was more rigorous than college was. And I can get to that in a little bit, whether that was true or not. But I did that. I did tutoring on the side. So I was part of a club on campus that tutored in math. And then on the side, I began to volunteer. I actually had a friend from soccer a few years, in middle school who started I don't remember the name of it, but it was an organization where people signed up to be tutors and then people in the community signed up to be tutored, and it was all virtual. So I primarily tutored in math a lot growing up. So tutoring was a big part. Soccer was huge. That occupied about 90% of my time. And then I was pretty involved in academics.
Yeah. Wow. And do you still play soccer?
I do not. So I went
Okay.
through high school. Admittedly, I think I overdid it. I was on a club team growing up and on the high school team growing up. So when one ended, the other began. And then I came to college and I actually started intramurals freshman year. But then the big difference about Los Angeles and Seattle, in Los Angeles, when it rains, there's a lot of real grass fields. So they cancel the games because they don't want your cleats to tear up all the grass and have it be all dirt. But in Seattle, you can't just cancel games when there's rain. And I don't like playing in the rain. So the weather was not fun. But also growing up, all my best friends played soccer. I never really hung out with friends because I played soccer with them. So I was with them all the time. Like my hanging out with friends was at soccer practice. So coming to college, there was that weather difference, but also my friends weren't on the team with me. They were, doing other things. So soccer wasn't the same to me. And I haven't really gone back, but I've kept that caliber of exercise. Previously, I would like to go to the gym, or in March, I ran a half marathon, and that, came with training. But now I've been doing, which I've done off and on for about a year, but now I'm back on. I go to spin classes every morning. So I've still kept that physical exercise, just in a different form.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll ever go back to soccer, but it was definitely a huge part of my life growing up.
Yeah. And when you look back at that sport and doing that, what did it learn you? What were your takeaways as a result of that? Or
Yeah, great question. There was a lot. A lot of it was teamwork. The nature of the sport, and this is something I pride myself compared to something like football or baseball. In soccer, you're constantly going all the time. I mean, the ball goes out, but it comes right back in through a throw in. You're going. So and as a team, since it's not just you're as a team, when you scale back a little bit or you don't try as hard, that has direct impacts to the people behind you or the people next to you. You always have to be going and playing your part, because if you don't, someone else has to pick up the slack for you. So I think that reliance of the team on you in such a heavy emphasis because you're always going, I think that taught me the value of other people are relying on me, so I gotta hold up my part. But also, if I can't hold it up, that doesn't just mean keep going at a slower pace. That means you go get a sub and someone with fresh legs can come in. So I really learned that others are relying on me, and that matters. And those other people, like I said before, being some of my best friends, made it even more important. Because if I can turn, if someone gets past me, but it's a stranger behind me that's next in line to defend the goal, whatever. But if that's my best friend, I know I need to chase back and be back up for them, because I'm not going to let them pick up my slack. So that was a huge part of it. But kind of on the very separately, having to do with the time commitment, there was a lot growing up that I gave up because of soccer. And I willingly chose soccer over all of these other things, but things like the debate team, there was the mock trial team, so many things that I had wanted to do in high school that I said no to because they conflicted with a game, and I needed to be there for the team. So having those trade-offs growing up kind of shifted me in college to appreciate that free time that I had and do all these other little things since I could. I don't know if that's making sense, but we have other people relying on me, but then also personally, just with the time commitment, I've learned to value having time and being able to try new things and say yes, and not have all my time locked up in one thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And I will have some questions for you about all the things that you're doing now. But before we go there, so yeah, why did you decide then when you were done with high school to go to Seattle and tell us about what you're studying, and why you chose that?
Yeah, great question. So I had worked with a college counselor. It's kind of cycles back to the Jewish Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I qualified for a college coach for free, and those types of services would have been way, not feasible for my family. And I had a college coach, and I took it extremely seriously. I like to think that it was my junior year, March of my junior year, when the lockdown happened due to COVID. And I think a lot of my peers had kind of chilled out a little bit and were doing other fun things, video games, whatever. I dived deep into my college search. I thought, my parents were pretty, they knew that whatever opportunities I suck out, that I would put my all into. So I had a little bit of freedom in where I could go, which meant that I wanted to make sure this decision was the perfect decision for me. So I had my spreadsheet, and I probably researched over 100 colleges and factored in things such as their graduation rates, the majors, the student body size, I looked into so much. And I had realized that I wanted to study business. I didn't know what, but I thought, business felt for me. My dad had done that growing up, and I liked the problems he was solving and his challenges. So I knew that that was the route for me. But there were some other features of a college experience that I wanted. I wanted to be able to find housing. I wanted to be able to choose my major. I wanted to afford myself the flexibility to make these choices. And I wanted to be in a big city, but I wanted kind of a smaller campus size. And the last big thing was I wanted to be near an airport. My parents were in Los Angeles, but there was rumblings that they were going to move, and they eventually did move. So I knew I didn't want to just go close because I was close to them, because they were going to move at some point. So I thought, as long as I'm near an airport, it doesn't matter how long the flight is, as long as I can get myself to an airport, that's okay. And this had come from my sister going to a school in California, but not near an airport, and seeing all the challenges of her getting to and from school. So that was kind of why. So with all of these factors, I had, come down to a more feasible option in-state UC school. I had gotten into a reach school, so I got into Emory University, and then I had gotten into Seattle University, which turned out to be checked every single box that I had for a college. It was that small school in a big city. I was guaranteed housing for the first 2 years. I got into the honors program. So that's there's a couple different tracks, but the track I went into was a 2-year program where I get 3 classes, 4 credits each, and it's all English, history, philosophy, literature, economics, all things that would complement each other. And it would end in a policy development proposal around healthcare policy as the capstone at the end of the first 2 years. So I thought, I'm getting all this, and I would be not special treatment, but I'd be entering this special program where I would get very close relationships with faculty. So kind of all those combined brought me to Seattle University. And upon getting there, I quickly learned that I had made the right decision, and it was the right place for me. It was a place where I could go to. I was given so many opportunities. Because it's a little bit of a smaller school, it's so easy to join clubs, to get leadership positions in these clubs, and to do all these things to make you stand out. So yeah, I've quickly realized it was the right decision for me, but there was a lot of thought and time and energy put in. And then, of course, there was pretty significant scholarships, and the more I talk to friends, that's pretty common. Seattle University hands out a lot of merit-based awards, and that was something that really helped with the decision as well.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. Can you, when you go back to when you started, Can you maybe come up with an example in terms of, because you were saying, okay, there were so many opportunities. I felt home, almost from the first day. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell about it.
Yeah, so I moved in a couple days before school started. That's how they do it. They're really great for the freshmen. They move you in, and then they have all these events for new students, for different types of students, but also for your college to really get you involved before your academics start. So even before day one of classes, I went to in it was a I don't remember the specific title, but I'm in the Albers School of Business. So all of the Albers clubs, departments, organizations, they all came out to the quad to really introduce business students to what there is business related on campus. And I knew I was going to be in the honors program, so I wasn't going to take a ton of business classes for the first 2 years. So I was really craving that introduction into business that I wouldn't get in the honors program. So even before school started, I had found this business fraternity that really helped. They held a pledging process that really helped with all things professionalism. So while academically I was learning English, history, philosophy, which I loved, I would have the opportunity to pledge to this business fraternity starting fall quarter, where I would learn how to conduct myself in interviews, how to send emails, how to dress, how to network, when to network, and make all these connections right from day one. Another thing I did, there was a club fair. So, the first few days of school, I I reached out to the Jewish Student Union because the Jewish Big Brothers had been such a big part of me getting to college. I I knew that paying it forward was just me being successful because I knew, so many people are investing in me that being successful is the way to return the investment and say, hey, I did something with all your investment. Like this, everything you did for me has really helped. But I wanted to go a step further. So I wanted to give back to the Jewish community specifically. So I joined the Jewish Student Union, which, big surprise, at a Jesuit Catholic university is not very big. So it was a few students, but they brought me on board. So right that fall quarter, I was an event coordinator alongside a bunch of seniors. And then as they graduated, I became the president my sophomore year. Um, so those were the two main clubs that I started with freshman year. I know we'll get there, but over time, my 4 years in college, my involvement has greatly shifted. That first year and a half or 2 years was heavily involved in clubs, and then my final 2 years, heavily involved with campus jobs. So right from day one, there were all these clubs that I not only got into, but received leadership positions in and made so many connections with the seniors. It's funny to think when I was a freshman, I knew so many upperclassmen just because of these clubs. But now as an upperclassman focused primarily on campus employment, I know barely any freshmen and sophomores or first and second years. Um, yeah, so I hit the ground running when I got to
Wow.
college.
And so, I mean, clearly you were explaining that you were so busy with soccer in Los Angeles, but then, you're in Seattle, and again, your whole day, all the days are filled with all kinds of things. Yeah, can you maybe, well, you, before we, started to speak, you also had sent me emails about what you were doing. You also went abroad, right? In,
I
in the
Yeah,
beginning. So
yeah,
how did that come about, and
yeah,
what did
for
you
sure.
learn, and why? And yeah.
That's a really interesting story, actually. I went abroad my third year, but it was, I planned for it obviously prior to that. So that first year, I, got into all these clubs and I was getting leadership positions and, academics in the honors program was very rigorous. And so I did that the first year. My second year in college, I came back and I had, all these clubs. I had started a couple campus jobs and academics were very rigorous and it was a lot. That fall quarter of my sophomore year, that was the time I think it was the toughest time. My day was booked 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. with so many things. That was also when I started on the advisory council for the CEIE. There were so many opportunities coming to me, and because I had to say no in high school because of soccer, I just wanted to say yes to everything, and it became too much. And I kind of saw studying abroad, it was extremely feasible with the way my school structures studying abroad. I could find a program that the tuition carried over, but the program fee covered housing. So if I could find one with a lowered program fee, it was extremely feasible. But I saw this opportunity. I definitely saw the value in it, but I also saw it as a way to take a break from the hectic life that I had created here. I mean, I don't think it sounds great to see it as an escape because it in and of itself was valuable. But definitely in the beginning, I felt like what I was doing was unsustainable and I did need a break. And I think I saw this as an opportunity to have that break. Um, so I was scrolling through. I had a couple of criteria with where I was going, because I did need to do classes that would transfer over to my major. So I had to find ones with that offered certain economics or business classes. And I found this wonderful opportunity. It was through IES, which has a bunch of different study centers in a bunch of different countries. And this was in Siena, Italy. So it's the place of the paleo or the paleo. The horse races is super famous there. That's what it's known for. But the program was to study the business and economics of Italian food and wine. I had initially wanted to go somewhere maybe in Eastern Europe, but as soon as I heard about this program, I thought, when am I ever going to get this opportunity again? This just sounds amazing. So that combined with the fact that it was feasible, and the timing worked out, because I had an internship that summer before that I wanted to be there for the duration of. So I needed the program to start after that. Whereas, some programs had started in the summer. So it really fit the timing and everything. And I could get the classes I wanted. So all that together, it was wonderful. So I went in September of 2023 now. Wow, that was a while ago. I went in September of 2023, and it was a host university. So it was a study center. Sorry, it was a study center. That's what it was. So I was with 12 other students that happened to be from America. And we had, a list of classes, and I think I took the evolution of wine, a class that studied the farm to table businesses or the farm to table aspect of Italian cuisine. And then something that looked at, Italy's role in economics in the United Nations, and a couple things like that. And so I, studied a little bit, but I traveled a lot. Every weekend, I traveled to a new city or country.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was wonderful. In September, I went up and down Italy and I saw so many cities. And then once the weather got a little bit colder, that's when I went. I think I counted at one point like 10 different countries. But an amazing experience.
Wow. Yeah.
Definitely recommend to anyone who has that opportunity.
Parli italiano?
Un po'. I knew how to order a coffee at a restaurant. I could order food at a restaurant.
It's important.
It's definitely been a while, so it's becoming lost on me, but it was a great experience.
And, while you were doing that, was it kind of further affirming that you had, selected the right study because you were, business, or were you going, were the things happening where you thought, should I maybe switch or do something else?
Throughout my whole college, you mean?
No, during the trip.
During the trip abroad?
Yeah, during the time.
I think it reaffirmed it, and I think that when I was here, well, I guess first of all, those first 2 years, I didn't get a ton of business education. I took one class a quarter, so it was a total of 5 business-related classes. So I didn't gotten a huge taste. And then I did have a finance internship right before, so I got a little bit of taste of business. But that experience showed me a whole different side of business. I mean, I was doing field trips to small wineries in the, Tuscan countryside and, tasting wine, but also learning about how it was grown, how it was distributed, how it was bottled, who worked there. I learned such a different aspect of business that, what I was studying was preparing me for as well. So I think it just expanded my perception of business and the opportunities within business. And it also showed me that balance is balance is good. The Italian culture was a little bit more. It wasn't like the cutthroat United States college atmosphere of get that internship or what are you doing? The Italian culture definitely brought a different side to it, where there was this enjoyment about what they're doing. Like, we go to the wineries, and these people are so passionate about, the vineyards. These people are so passionate about what they're growing and the soil that goes into it, and they walk through I'm losing all the language now of what was happening at these vineyards, but they're cutting the grape. They're choosing only the best grapes. They put so much passion into their work that it was really inspiring to hear this is an avenue that I could go down as well. It doesn't all have to be the American college, big city notion of business.
I'd like to take a step back because you mentioned before you went abroad, you were already connected with the center of the Center of Ecumenical and Interfaith Engagement. How did you get involved, and why are you part of it?
Yeah, great question. So this had happened, I remember it was my freshman year. Um, Rabbi Wiener in the surrounding Seattle community and Dr. Trice, I'm not exactly sure their relationship, but I know they know each other, and they wanted to come meet with the officers of the Jewish Student Union. I don't exactly remember why. I was still very new at the time, and I still embarrassed. I mixed up the titles because I was very unfamiliar with them. So I called Dr. Trice. I called him Rabbi Trice on accident, and no one corrected me, but I, internally made the note. So I really didn't know what was going on, but what they were trying to, the officers of the club were trying to introduce me to all these people and really get me connected, not only with the, Jewish community in Seattle, but overall university community. So they connected, and I met Dr. Trice, and I think he emailed me a couple weeks later, or maybe it was the end of the quarter, because he was seeking more student voices on his CEIE council. And this did come at a time where I was very stressed and overwhelmed with everything, but I also just wanted to say yes. I knew this would be a wonderful opportunity. I knew he was held in high esteem and well respected, and Dr. Trace is and still is doing such great work on campus that I wanted to learn more and wanted to be a part of it. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I agreed, but I just could tell it would be such a wonderful opportunity. But since joining the center, I've been able to see all the wonderful work they've been doing. And I like my unique position as that student voice in being able to see how can we make all this work known to students or accessible to students, and how can we bridge that gap. And I know that, the university is not all about young students like me. Like, there's graduate programs. It's also about the faculty and greater community work. But I really like the opportunity that I have to try and integrate that student perspective, or how can we engage more students with my position on the council.
Yeah. No, thanks, Katie. Yeah, let us let us go to some questions that I sent you ahead of time in terms of I explained to you how this podcast came about. It's a spin-off of 100-mile walk that I did, to raise awareness about hunger, poverty, and injustice, and as well as some funding. So I know you're very, active, so you could do it easily. You can do it probably in a day, what I'm doing in 5 days. But if you would be asked to walk 100 mile in a week, for which cause would you do it, and
Mm.
why?
Well, that's a great question. Something I'll give you some context and then it'll lead into the cause. But and I know this is not applicable to everyone, but I know in my life the opportunities of education, a sense of stress-free education, and I'll expand on that, has been life-changing for me. The opportunity to go to classes and study and not also be worried about taking care of others or providing for myself. I have provided for myself, but having this opportunity to go to classes and not worry about all these things back at home or where's my next meal coming from is something that's been invaluable to me. It's changed my life. So, having the opportunity, and this is true all the way back from elementary school. My parents have been or I've been fortunate enough to have parents that give me these opportunities. I have had to work for things, but it's not this overwhelming sense of I'm in school, but I need to be thinking about my next meal, or I'm having trouble learning because I'm hungry right now. So that opportunity of education for everyone anywhere, especially at a young age, where you're not worried about how you're going to pay rent or you're not worried about your next meal, is something that I would walk 100 miles in, however many days it would take me. I'm thinking like 4 days, hopefully. But that's something I'm really passionate about because I know how life changing it has been for me. And I also see peers in college who don't have that same privilege that I do, who do wonder where their next meal is coming from. And we have so many wonderful campus resources that helps with that. We have a food pantry, we have spaces with free meals, and I see the concern that students have when that fridge of free meals is empty. And that's something that if I had the opportunity to raise money or awareness for, I would try and, provide those meals or provide that support so that those students can devote their all into school and it'll come back to them and, they can pay it forward later down the line.
Cool. Yeah. And maybe I'm going to hold you to you walking that 100 mile in 4 or 5 days, because I'm kind of ready, to hand over the baton to the next generation. So we
Well, if
will
it's for
talk in October,
yeah,
if you have time to do it.
yeah. If it's for a good cause, I'll, get out
Yeah.
there and go. I don't know if it'll take less than 5, but I would try is what I was
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, understood. Um, you know, you were explaining you were part of um the Jewish Student Union. You're also part now of the center, that works on religion and spirituality, all these type of things. When I walk, we often talk about purpose of life, and then also about religion, spirituality. And one
Mhm,
one topic that I'm intrigued with is the conversation around the younger generation, and if they consider themselves still to be religious or not. And I often hear like, "Oh, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual." So,
mhm,
and you can have a whole podcast about that, of course. But the question that I have for you is, what do you see happening among your peers, in the university
mhm,
around religion and spirituality? And I know it's difficult to generalize, but some indication
mhm,
of, what you see.
mm. Yeah, great question. Um, I think so my background was kind of, uh, er, never mind, let me restart. Um, so my personal connection,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm rather religious or spiritual. It was something that, it wasn't really, weaved into my life early on, and it never really stuck. It wasn't something I identified with. But it's something that in high school, I felt like my peers were the same way. But in college was when I found some variation, and there were people that were religious, students, not just I was used to adults being religious or spiritual, but I was introduced to students being religious. And, when you're in college, that's often the time where you're making these choices for yourself. So it was interesting for me to see students who, without their parental influence there, had chosen to go into religion or spirituality. So it was really interesting to see. And it was the first time that I was realizing how religion, in my opinion, from what these people were doing and saying, religion provided a lot of answers to when there were no answers. That was really inspiring to me. But what I'm seeing as a big trend among, people my age or college students, I feel like you have and spirituality and religion is interweaved in all of this, but you have the 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 religion or spirituality or something that helps give you purpose or meaning, and then you have what you're doing. So eh, what I'm noticing a lot with college students or even just my peers, the what you're doing is following a path that was expected of you. We all graduated high school, we're all going to college, we're all joining clubs, campus jobs, we're all applying for internships. We're going through the motions, but what a lot of us are missing is that purpose that could come from religion or spirituality. So I'm seeing this, not a disconnect, but there's a difference between my peers that I see that are rooted in religion or spirituality, and this is why they're doing it, and then a difference with people who just go through the motions, but they don't really have their why. And I think the development of this why, whether it's religion, spirituality, or another catalyst for developing that why, I think that's going to happen in the next few years as for the last 4 years, we've had a pretty outlined path for us. But now that we're graduating, that's kind of can go anywhere. You can go any way. So I think that's where there might be some struggle, which leads to that development of the why. I could just be projecting. That's something I think will happen to me. I think I graduate, I have a few months off, and then I start working full time. And I think, the rest of this year is going to be a bit of confusion and a little bit of being lost, which I'm nervous about, but it's something I'm welcoming in hopes that at the end of that tunnel, the why will be developed. And I don't know if that was the right way of going about it, but that was just how my life turned out
Yeah.
and how I feel like my peers' lives are going as well.
And was it something that you were saying to me when you were playing soccer and you looked at your peers at that time, it was not really an issue there, right? Was it at your house?
The issue of not
Well,
having
not an
the
issue is
why.
not the right word, but talking or thinking about religion and or spirituality. Was it something that your parents provided you with or talked with you about, or was it no?
It wasn't really talked about.
Mhm.
My parents were very insistent on, family dinner every night, no phones
Mhm.
at the table. So there was definitely conversation and, very
Yeah.
close family. But religion and spirituality weren't really ever a topic. Something that I did go to my extended family, we would have, the three major holidays. They have the joke of the 3-day Jew. That was definitely my family. I think it was Rosh Hashanah, Passover, and I don't even know the big three, but for a few of those, we would go see family for those, and it was way more about family and reconnecting than it was about religion or spirituality. So I think the family aspect, this is the community that raised you, this is the community that cares for you, community referring to this extended family. This is the community that like all my mom's childhood memories are with. That was emphasized. Definitely not religion or spirituality.
Okay. We also talked a bit about this before we started recording, but what I hope this podcast is contributing to is that it's connecting people. So, we are connected. I'm connecting you with the listeners. I'm also always trying to connect my guest with the previous guest. And that's done through a question of the previous guest. And the previous guest is asking you, how do you know
and I mean knowing in a deep way, in a deep level, that you belong in a group, and maybe you have an example, because I think it's more and more rare and more important, therefore, to know that this is where I belong and how I belong, and to take that deep knowing and translate that into something that's worthwhile.
A great question. So I did hear of this question earlier, and I was doing some brainstorming. I think at first, like the answer sounds weird at first, but it made sense to me on a deeper level. So when I thought about belonging, it made me think of my friends and closer relationships. So I didn't, but then I was able to extend this to broader communities. But my first thought went to oftentimes in friendships, and it's heightened in my opinion for college friendships because they're unique, and these were the first 4 years of my life on my own. I didn't have soccer practice to see my friends, so I have to go out of my way to make plans. And a lot of times in the last 4 years, I've thought, am I putting enough into this friendship? Am I making this friend feel like I'm there for them? Those kinds of questions came up a lot and prompted me to reach out. Or, for example, one of my best friends had a close relationship with like a grandparent. And the day that that grandparent died, the anniversary of that date is sometimes hard for her. So that's something that I realized now as an adult. That's something I need to know and something I need to remember to show her extra support on that day. So those types of questions and realizing, oh, that's not her family's or not an obligation, but she no longer lives with her family where that extra support is given. That's now on friendships at this age. So where I'm all leading to is the constant, thought in the back of my mind of, am I doing enough? Am I showing enough support to them? Or, are my actions making it clear that I care about them? That actually is what made me feel like I belonged. The fact that I cared so much that I'm always thinking of my actions and how I can support them. That's what made me feel like I belong. And, by contrasting that, I think communities where there's not belonging are ones where the members don't think about their actions or don't think about how they support others. It's those members who just take who they are and kind of add it to the community. They don't integrate themselves and care for others and have that care come back to them. I think those are the communities where it's not belonging, it's more of just being with no real connections.
Thank you. Your question for the next guest.
So a question for the next guest. And I've thought a lot about this. This is, I feel like, a question that comes up a lot. Especially at my age, early 20s, college student, the questions of, are you successful? Are you happy? Those very, what seemingly simple questions, or are you okay? How are you doing? They seem very surface level, but something I feel like I've grown to be increasingly passionate about is my ability to define those questions. So when someone asks me if I'm happy or successful, I really like to take a moment to define what that means in my context. So I think my question for the next guest is, what are your definitions of those seemingly, mundane questions? How do you define happiness? How has that changed throughout your life? Same with success. How do you define it now? How might have you defined it earlier? And how might you define it later in your life?
Great question. I always say I'm happy that I don't have to answer those. Okay, music is very important to me, so I always have a question about music as well. If I had you choose a song or a piece of music that represents, for a big part, who you are, who's Katie, which
Mhm.
song or piece of music would that be and why?
Yeah, great question. This one was, we had talked previously about some of the questions, and this one was the one I was not nervous to answer, but felt like my answer was a little bit off what you might be looking for. I'm not a huge music or media movies. I'm not a hugely into that. The reason is because when I put on music, my mind ends up thinking about a million other things. And the music becomes kind of the background to what my thoughts are going, what's happening in my thoughts. When I was training for my half marathon a few months ago, I got a lot of thinking done because there was a lot of time with music and my mind just trailed off a little bit. But along this vein of music and releasing music and albums and different songs, I felt like I really resonated with that process. Um, I feel like there's a lot that happens in terms of, an album being produced, and you have these different songs which tell different stories or have different perspectives of what's going on. And sometimes some songs do way better than others in an album. And I kind of saw an album as a metaphor for what my life right now. And all the different songs are the different parts of my life. So we have, and I heavily contextualized this in college. So I have, a song for academics, I have campus employment, I have clubs, I have family, I have whatever else I feel like I'm up to, I have studying abroad. And in different settings, some of those parts of me or songs in an album come up way more. Some are way more interesting. Some kind of fall behind. Even throughout this interview, there's some things that I've worked on that we haven't even touched on, and things that I'm really passionate about. But also, I haven't talked about soccer in a few years. So that's, a song that kind of has been brought to the spotlight. So I really like this metaphor of music, specifically album, as a collection of things or a collection of things I'm working on. And then another thing I thought about was the entire process of writing music and how many hands that there are in that process and all of the different, stakeholders in its production. So me coming here was definitely the effort of a bunch of people. And what I'm up to now, a bunch of people have invested in me for my own success. So I think that also parallels the entire process of making music. Um, yeah, so that's kind of where my mind went. I do listen to music, but it's definitely not a huge part of my life, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to push you here
Mhm.
because I do understand what you're getting at. And it makes total sense also, I think, for the listeners as well, into what you have explained. You're so active in so many fields. So you have an album, there is no specific song. But okay, you have an album with 8 songs, and I
Okay.
still ask you, okay, you need to pick 3 songs. What would you pick?
All right, I can do that. And this is definitely right off the top of my head. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe what I was just, playing, an hour ago. I feel like is it Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, I think
Mm-hmm.
it is. Is the one that I kind of feel like represents my academics and professional life. Because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've done so much and I keep going on, which has been very exciting. For my uh I feel like my personal life of, aside from whatever goes on a resume, aside from, you know, people have invested in me, I'm gonna try and give it back to them. Like, aside from all that, what I just like doing in my free time, which a lot is cycling. I love going to spin classes. I feel like the song that encapsulates that is Dancing Queen by Mamma Mia. That's been, I said I don't listen to music, but if I want to hear something in the background, I've been loving, or it's by ABBA, but the Mamma Mia soundtrack has been nonstop. um, so that I've been loving. And then maybe for this journey of finding purpose, in the next couple of years, I think that song might be, I think it's Growing South by Zach Bryan. I think and I don't know that song too well, but to me it screams the idea of finding a place where, I think those are the lyrics, growing so I don't remember, but finding a place where me, not as a professional, not as all the things that are on the resume, but who I am as a person can grow and how I can figure that out. I think that's the song that would represent that portion of me.
Nice, beautiful. So I will
Yeah.
add those 3 songs to the Spotify playlist that we have
Oh,
developed. If you go to Spotify, hashtag Walk Talk Listen, you'll find all the songs that have been picked by my guest.
nice.
Um, Katie, we also within the center, we often talk about the sustainable development goals and, how you contribute. And actually, I think at the center, we went one step further because we are also part of the discussion there that trying to change systems and processes is not enough. I mean, we came up as a world with 17 sustainable development goals, but also you need to work on the knowledge and abilities as an individual as well as a community to ensure that those process changes and structure changes will happen, and the inner development goals were developed, and the center and Religica in particular, they've developed, they linked the inner development goals with the Ignatian discernment. The question that I have for all my guests is actually, I'm not going to ask you, have you heard about the inner development goals? Because I know you have. But what do you like the listeners to know about the inner development goals and or the sustainable development goals? If you meet somebody in an elevator and, what would you tell them in a nutshell? Hey, you should know this. Yeah.
Something I don't know if I would say you should know, but maybe more I would recommend is that, you know, all of these development goals, sustainable or inner, they're about taking where things are at now and moving them a direction or to another place. And I would emphasize seeing how different communities or different people are functioning right now, because you have such a singular worldview, even in America or even in Seattle or even in Capitol Hill where I live. I have this way of life that I have. And so first I'll talk about the sustainable development and then move to inner development. But I have this, range of this living style. And, there's a little bit of a range for people who live in Seattle or anywhere. There's just a range. And it's about these sustainable development goals, taking where I'm at now and how can I get to where we need to be. And the responsibility or the the range of things you can do differs depending on where you're starting. When I was in Siena, Italy, things looked a lot different. The energy supplied to that, area of that small town in Tuscany, was so much less. So things looked so much different about how we lived and, where we went, the amount of transportation we used, how we got our food, the amount of energy consumption required to get that food from the farm to my table. Things looked so different. So expanding your horizons to have an understanding of how everyone lives, and there is such a variation that I don't capture with just Seattle and Siena. But expanding your worldview to understand where other people are coming from. Because when we have these goals, yes, it's about the direction we're going, but really understand where people are starting. And I think, if I didn't go abroad, I would have never even considered that. Um, I think I don't even know which end of the spectrum I would have been, but I wouldn't have realized how many shades of gray there were between, first world countries and developing countries, and how people live. So having that understanding of the variety of how we live, and how each of us can move in the right direction, but we each have different roles to play, or the magnitude of the change we need to make is a little bit different. And I think that the same goes with inner development goals, really understanding how people are at such different places. And again, that direction's the same, but how we can make those changes looks very different.
I have a couple of questions that I really want to go over with you quick, so kind of more
Sure.
rapid fire.
Mhm.
Yeah, what are some of the things that you worry about at the moment?
Things that I'm worried about. Oh, there's a lot. Something on the top of my mind is
Uh-huh.
and something that I think hopefully this podcast is helping with, the disconnect between the younger generations and the older
Yeah.
generations. I feel like a lot of what's told to younger generations is, learn, figure things out for yourself. Now's the time for you to explore. But then we have the older generations who are like, well, I've lived this, I've experienced this, this is my opinion. And I feel like the generational divide is pretty
Uh-huh.
strong. And I think that's something that I'm worried about. And I think integrating that and having mutual respect uh, for both generations could help mediate a lot of problems and bring together some harmony that I think we need at this moment.
Where do you find hope?
Where do I find hope? That's a great question. Um, I think I find hope with with the sense of family and senses of community. I think having a home, not necessarily quotations, but referring to a group of people who you feel like you belong to and who challenge you and who you can go to for things. I think that's having that base goes such a long way. And not having that base really prevents you from moving forward in many different aspects. And something I really like about our generation, but also other generations, is that there's this huge sense of family and community and support for one another on a more micro level. I think, generally we need to expand this community, but I do think generally we have such strong ties to people. And that's what gives me hope that we can take this base and hopefully expand it.
Um, any message, invitation, or question you would like to share with the listeners?
So, a message I'd like to share is that as much, as many hard things that are out there and things are really tough right now and a lot of uncertainty going on, but I do find so many opportunity and so many avenues to make change. And I mean that on not just large levels like you're doing such great work with your podcast and connecting people, but I urge people to also look more inward at things that they already are doing and seeing where there's opportunity there, or maybe they are already taking advantage of that opportunity, but I urge them to see the value of what they're doing and seeing that it does have greater impact. You know, something as simple as maintaining a friendship with someone, that seems very natural, but that itself is maintaining connection with others. And that's shaping your worldview and that's shaping their worldview and practicing harmony with others. So, as much as, things that are going on, I look a little bit smaller scale and see things that are happening right now are great and there is opportunity there and things are already valuable and things are already happening. So in hard times, I encourage people to see these things and understand that all this good stuff is still happening.
You know, I refer very often to a skit from Sesame Street.
Mm.
And maybe I've told this already at the center, but just to remind the listeners. So it's where Ernie of Sesame Street wants to learn how to play the saxophone. So he's playing with the band. Every time he plays, you hear this freaky sound. And then, his band members are saying, Ernie, if you really want to learn how to play the saxophone, you need to put the ducky down because he walks around with his ducky all the time. So, and finally, when he puts his ducky down, he can learn how to play the saxophone. So my question to you is, what is your ducky?
Think I think my ducky that definitely need to put down is that rigid vision of success. I think, and this happens in any part of life, you go about it and, it's told to you what the next step is and not even what to do or how to get there, but just that you need to get there. And there's, deadlines and all that kind of stuff. And I think the concern about the end goal is preventing us from having meaningful impact and growth in the steps to get there. And I think I went through that a lot throughout college. I need XYZ job, which means I need to study XYZ major and do XYZ club and XYZ intergist. And it wasn't until I put that end goal aside that I realized I love economics. I want to study that. I love philosophy. I want to study that. And I put that end goal away for a little bit, and I found the path that I enjoyed the most. And I had a completely new end goal that I love way more than that original one that I had to put down. But I do really think that this can be expanded to any area where sometimes just let yourself explore what you like or how to get there. And this could be in your job, this could be in your personal life with whatever goals. If you signed up like I did for a half marathon, just try running 1 mile and see where that takes you. Don't have this, rigid, I have to do this time. Definitely push yourself. Something I am happy about is that I do work really hard. And even if I don't have an end goal, I work hard in the intermediary. So I totally understand if having that end goal is what you need to push yourself. But if you can and you have that motivation, take that end goal away and just see where you go on your own. And I think that can result in something so much greater.
Yeah. And of course, putting the ducky down doesn't mean you cannot take up the ducky later, right? So,
Right.
Katie, these conversations always go fast. But before I'm going to thank you for, the conversation, is there one question that I did not ask you that I should have asked you today?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I want to take this time to talk a little bit about some of the research work that I've been doing because it's with such great faculty at the university that have given me such great opportunities. So I kind of want to take the time to give back to them and, promote what they're working on, because they have invested so much in me when they absolutely did not need to. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I want to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I've been working on it'll be for a total of 3 years by the time I graduate, is with Dr. Jones. She's an economics professor. She's wonderful. I've had a couple classes with her, and you've never know, but she's done all these wonderful research projects. She's working on a book that talks about the history, issues, and trends of women in work in the United States over the last century or so. So it's an encyclopedia style book, and she's giving me the opportunity to choose, there's a preset about 200 topics. And each week I choose a couple and I write on them. And through that, I've learned so much about, anywhere from, the history of women in aviation to now I'm researching why the college's career pipeline. So women have made massive gains over the last, 50, 60 years in education, but why this hasn't translated into wage convergence. So she's been giving me such a wonderful opportunity to research so many things. And it's really timely, and I really enjoy it that as a woman entering, the work world, I can research how has, my place in this world changed over time. If, 50 years ago, I definitely would not have had these same opportunities. So I think it's a privilege to have this outline to learn about it, and all of the legislation that gives me the opportunities today. And definitely scary seeing that as legislation comes in, it can just as easily be removed. And really knowing the different Supreme Court decisions and legislation that has given me these opportunities. It's been wonderful. And second, a little bit more recent, but my work with Dr. Kelly. He's also a wonderful professor and he's done so many wonderful things academically. Most recently, I keep seeing him on the local Seattle news, talking about financial crises and things like that. He's doing some great work looking at the effect of two things, but the effect of an increase in police department budgets on drug usage rates, specifically with the NISDA. I don't remember what it stands for, but a couple months back, for him, I became an expert in that database that tracks drug usage over time, which reveals some great studies and leads to great policy recommendations. And now we're looking at, during COVID, the murder rate shot up. And yes, that was a couple different factors, one of which being the increased trend of violence. But another factor was the hospitals at the time were at or above capacity with COVID patients. So the ability to treat victims of gunshot wounds was diminished as, nurses and doctors were overworked and the hospitals were overfilled with patients. So looking at how much of this change in murder rate is due to this violence or how much is it due to just hospital capacity, which has some great implications for hopefully investments in hospital and other emergency department healthcare. And what I've learned so much from this research project is the value of public data sources, and that requires funding. And, I started this project just about 9 months ago, and there's lots of available research. And kind of as I go back and check these sources, a lot of them are being removed or not updated anymore. So I really feel as I graduate, obviously he'll continue this research maybe with other student researchers. But I hope he's still able to continue out the project given the changes in funding. But I just wanted to shout them out because they're two professors who have given me such wonderful opportunities. I still can't believe I've had the opportunity to work with them. I've definitely enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's, sounds really interesting and important research. Katie, thank you so much. I was listening to you all. I mean, first of all, it's so articulate and it's, so rich. Then I was thinking about your album, and clearly it's not just one album. It's at least a double album.
Yeah.
So
At least.
I'd like to thank you for everything you do and who you are. Keep on doing that. Keep on, be the person that you are. So thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to, invest in me and learn my story and ask such insightful questions, but also for creating this platform and really, connecting voices from across the world. It's extremely impactful. And I look forward to continuing along to listen to the different podcasts. And I'm really excited about the album. I didn't know the Spotify playlist. I didn't know about it before, but I'm hoping my songs fit in.
No, they will, and they are. So I mean, it's very interesting actually to listen to that playlist because it goes from Bach to Bob Marley to Queen, so it's really interesting. No, thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.